I want to welcome to the programme, all the way from Queensland, David Glen, who's had overcome an enormous addiction in his life. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Keith.
I mean, your story is not an everyday story for many people, I'm sure. Your life has changed, though, in amazing ways, and I want to look at that. But first, you spent many years battling a very real problem with shoplifting. Tell us what your life was like in those days and what it felt like.
Well, my problem spanned a period of 17 years. I started off as a youngster, a bit shocked when I saw a friend actually shoplift, but before I knew it, I was doing the same. As I got older, I started to realise that my situation wasn't really a good one. As I matured, and I knew I needed to do something about it. And by that time, though, I found it was difficult for me to overcome the problem.
David, did you realise it was wrong? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, I did, although in some ways I rationalised it. Like as a young adult or an older teen, I was a bit alienated towards society, and that sort of enabled me to rationalise what I was doing.
And you've said, you've written this yourself, that you knew you were grappling with a problem that was beyond your power, but you held on to some kind of invisible thread of hope. How did those two things live together at the same time?
It's hard to explain, really. I did everything I could in my strength to try and straighten up and get things sorted out, and it was just a disappointing battle, but I just never gave up. I just hoped that it was something that I eventually could get a handle on.
And how hard was it to hold on to hope when you felt it was running out of control?
It was it was pretty discouraging at times. I think I eventually got to a point where I thought it might be something I have to live with for the rest of my life. And you desperately wanted to stop shoplifting and tried in your own strength to do it on a number of occasions. Was that a kind of will thing to say, I will no longer do this? I tried a couple of different avenues. I actually got counselling with Lifeline, which was quite helpful at the time, although it sort of helped me deal with the outward manifestations of the problem, like behaviour control. But I knew that inside, the real problem, the seed of the problem was still there.
And then you came into an experience of Jesus Christ, and that was the key, really, to many things. That's not a typical conclusion for most people in this situation. What made you start thinking about that?
Well, even though I'd sort of given up on God in lots of ways, through negative early experiences with the church, I kept searching for truth. I believed that truth existed, and I never gave up on that. And I ultimately found truth in a place I least expected.
Tell us about that then. You talk about you didn't believe in God, but you knew he might be there, which is perhaps how some people's search begins. Tell us something about that.
Well, I was trained as a scientist, so I was a sort of a rationalist thinker. After I became converted, people immediately said you'd been brainwashed. And initially I said no, but then I thought, yeah, I have been brainwashed, but not into Christianity. All my life I'd been sort of taught and trained in a rationalist sort of view of life, and that there was no God, you know. But scientifically I knew it was still a possibility that he could be out there, and I believed there had to be some sort of answer.
And were people very much part of that story?
God was working in the background in my life without me being aware of it, drawing me to him. I believe there was one person in my life, my grandmother, who had consistently prayed for me, probably since the womb. I'm sure she was a key player, although, you know, I never realised it until the day.
David, I'm not sure many people will ask you this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you still have temptations to go back to that thing that has in the same way that somebody might say, for example, we've interviewed many times people here who are alcoholics, and they would say, I am an alcoholic. They wouldn't say, I was an alcoholic. Do you mind me asking that question?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't these days. In the early stages, yes, but those temptations, I saw them for what they were, and I knew inside that I was free and I wasn't going to surrender that freedom. Nowadays, it's not an issue.
Look, there's so much more of the story that we haven't the time to cover here, but if people want to really get a handle on that story, they can look at your website, can't they? And they can pick it up there, changinglinesonline.org. Now, look, that website's an important thing because you now communicate, don't you, many, many stories through that website. Tell us about that.
Well, we started off with 3 stories, a friend and I, and we like to share our stories with other people, and we thought, why not use the internet as a way of doing that? And we established a site about 6 years ago. We now carry around 130 stories of people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds and nationalities, how their lives have been changed by discovering Jesus, basically, and letting him come in.
And you get a lot of hits on that side?
We get over 4,000 hits every day.
Mm. Presumably that's people way beyond Australia as well who are looking
worldwide.
Mm. Yeah. How do you decide what stories are going to be on there?
We go into a process, because we're working with people that we've never met usually, so we go into a process of communicating with them, getting to know them by email, clarifying things in their stories, and just between the two of us we decide whether it's something we should go with or not if we feel right about it.
Mm. Now look, David, when people go on your website then they can actually leave messages, they can... So how do you deal with all of that?
We get several emails every day from people who want to communicate with us, and we try and respond to them as quickly as we can. And we also have a prayer team of about 30 people who are committed to supporting people who come to us with needs.
I mean, David, you and I were talking earlier, and there I said what I believe to be the case. One of the worst things you can say is, I'll pray for you, and then not to do so. I mean, I'm just encouraged by that if people come on and they've got a need and they ask you to pray, that you will actually do that. Mm. It's not just a kind of thing that rolls off the tongue with ease. Mm. It's an important ministry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shortcoming of a lot of net-based presence, you know, and ministries, that they're not always sharp. You know, some of them run by remote control, but ours doesn't.
Now, look, let's get back now to your story, because there's a bit of it that I really do find interesting, and that's this, the kind of Zacchaeus principle, you know, the Luke 19 story, which is where a lot of this thought might come from. You read there about restitution and the fact that there might be the need not only to turn your back on something, but actually start to put things right. I mean, how was that when you started putting that principle into practice?
It was a very interesting and challenging time in my early life as a Christian. There's a lot of work to do. I would have had to go to at least 100 different people and organisations over a couple of years. And it was scary each time I did that. Right up to the end, there would be intimidation mentally not to do it. But each time, to my amazement, I found people were very receptive and very gracious. No one ever gave me a bad reception.
So tell me what it's like. You go in. What did you do? Go in and say, like, I'm come here because I need to put things right because I've stolen from you?
Pretty well, more or less. Depending on the circumstances, sometimes I'd be speaking with an individual business owner. Other times it'd be a Myer executive, or and I'd be saying words to that effect, and I'd use the opportunity to point out that I've become a Christian.
Yes.
That I have wronged them, and that I'm sorry about it, and I'd like to put it right.
And were you conscious that God was using that, really, as a means of witness to these people?
Especially on some occasions, but yeah, other people, some of the accountant executives didn't know what to do with it because it was such a rare
I don't think it happens every day, you know, to be honest with you, whether it's Myers or wherever. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's an amazing story. One final quick question. Jesus transformed your life through his forgiveness and his gracious love for you. In your opinion, can he change anybody's life?
I certainly believe he can, and that's been borne out in our experience over 20 years as Christians. We've reached out to a lot of people, and we know that God loves everybody, and he's got the power and the desire to transform anyone's lives. He'll turn to him.
What do you think the key is?
The key is ultimately opening up your life and being honest with God and letting Jesus, getting yourself established with Jesus.
And did you find the second bit, the restitution, was whether it would be, in your case it would be restitution, but it's doing something afterwards, isn't it? It's the belonging, belief. Did you find that very important?
Well, for me it was. It was one of the things that God put before me and said, I want you to attend to this, and so, yeah.
David, your life in ministry now is very much taken up with changing lives, online.org, also in a very effective work with young people in teaching in lots of areas. It's a delight to have you on the programme and for you to share with us something that's a very deeply personal story. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.